Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com Monday night doubleheader NFL strategy show. Dave Loughran, Matt Gajewski coming to you live. Hey, happy to have you guys with us, though. We had a fun day yesterday, hopefully, and now we're back to round out week 4 with 2 games. One of them kind of ugly, but we like those spots, Matt.
We do like these spots. I wish it was a showdown because I'm no stranger to this. A lot of people are going to do this. Probably load up on the second game, the more interesting game. But that could lead to some potential leverage spots. There's still not many options. We definitely need to dive into it, but I vastly prefer the greasy showdowns to half a greasy slate we have tonight.
Yeah, we got a greasy one, but I like it. Also, some significant injuries too. I mean, I don't know how much it's going to play into our analysis, but Frank Ragnow out for Detroit, kind of the anchor of that offense. Although that offensive line is just so good, they should be okay. Jeffrey Simmons is doubtful for Tennessee. There's a few guys, like a few decent names here that are going to be out in this game. Both of these games, I should say. Again, how big of a deal is it? I don't know. You know, Teron Armstead's still out for Miami. Kendall Fuller out. We're getting to the part of the season where you're going to see a bunch of injuries. The other one, Raheem Mostert, I'm now seeing is not expected to play.
You said Raheem Mostert. Sorry, I was clearing my throat.
Yeah. From what I'm seeing now, he's not expected to play.
Yeah, that has just led to monster Devin Achane workloads, which unfortunately losing Tua has sort of bottled the entire offense, put a cap on it. But we haven't really seen a lot of other players factor into that backfield when he's been out. So looks like tentatively that is the situation again. And maybe in a matchup against Tennessee, he finds more success without Jeffrey Simmons. We'll see on that.
Overall, those things, the stars kind of align for him today. I know Jeffrey Simmons hasn't really lived up to expectations recently, but he's still a pretty decent run stopper. And now Raheem Mostert's expected absence makes a bit of a deal. So we'll get into it. Let's go position by position today, as we usually do for these 2 gamers.
Let's do it.
And as always, if you don't mind, coming off the weekend, take a single second, atone for your sins this morning, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Goes a long way for us, and we love you guys for it. Leave a comment down below. I read and try and respond to all of them. It's enjoyable most of the time. Matt, I'm counting them here. We're less than 400 away now. We're less than 400 away from the 100,000 subscriber mark here on the Stokastic YouTube channel.
We'll be there in no time. This week, next week, one of the next couple weeks.
I think we'll be here soon, like this by Sunday.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. We had a couple big winners this weekend too. That always helps. I saw some really high scores.
Absolutely. We had a 50K Bug Boy with a $20 super chat. Thank you, sir. Some Bug Boy beer bucks for the boys because Bug Boy knows ball.
He's been smashing, dude. He had it's like 2 or 3 weeks where he's had 4-figure scores.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's been smashing.
Tough to do in the NFL.
It really is.
I had a shot. I was second. Actually, Jake, I saw him in chat DM me. He's like, good luck. I was second in the power sweep for a while until James Conner scored. So up there for 50K. Ended up in 15th. But Never Live to Win was pulling for a top 5. I think 5th was like 15K. But look, we'll take those sweats when we can get them. You know, we'll take them. Eventually it's coming.
It's NFL. You mentioned it, and it's hard. You're going to have weeks where you get absolutely dusted, and then you just try to maximize those spots where you actually put yourself in position to win. So getting a finish like that, not only is like those can make your season, but even the 5th place finishes, the 10th, those are the things that help you scrape by and live to another week where you can hopefully put yourself in position again.
This is true, man. Let's get into it. Started off at quarterback. All right, so at quarterback, you have really there's no expensive quarterbacks this week. Jared Goff is the most, and we can pull FanDuel up as well. Jared Goff on DraftKings is the most expensive at $6,400. That's nothing. And then Geno Smith is pretty inexpensive as well. I think there's a number of ways you can go here. As ridiculous as this sounds, I'm willing to probably play any quarterback on this slate, and you're probably going to roll your eyes at me, but I don't think it's insane. I will say that when you're looking, and hold on, let me put this code in for FanDuel. I will say that with Geno, he might just be forced to throw a lot again today. This is a pass funnel defense. I'm not saying of epic proportions, but they don't allow rushing production. You look at the Detroit Lions run defense this season. In these 3 games, they've allowed 77, 70, and 83 rushing yards. And for what it's worth, all of those games were close. So it's not like they got up early and forced teams to throw. Rams game went to overtime. Tampa game, they lost, and Tampa still only had 70 rushing yards. And Arizona was super competitive. That pick 6 called back on the 2-minute warning could have swung the game, and Arizona could have won that. So, yeah, I think there's a definite possibility that teams just not abandon the run, because Seattle's not going to do that, but have to throw more and have more success through the air against Detroit.
Yeah, that was the case last year. They did invest a lot of resources into their secondary, but a lot of it's youthful or just, changing teams. And they've been extremely strong up front, led by Hayden Hutchinson. And that's not really going to change. They have a good interior presence too, so I won't discount that. But you also have a new offensive coordinator in Seattle. Ryan Grubb comes from a pass-based scheme. They ran a pseudo air raid in college at Washington under him. And when you have the horses to do it, DK Metcalf, Smith and Jigba, Lockett, Geno Smith playing out of his mind, why not? They haven't had Kenneth Walker, which may have also played a role in their elevated pass rate. He's expected back. But why run him into the teeth of Detroit's defense when you can throw it over the top with a highly efficient quarterback? So I think that'll be their game plan. It's what they've done all season long.
Pretty much, yeah. It's also going to be a way different test for the Seahawks, because when you look at the teams that they've faced thus far, Matt, Denver at home. So Bo Nix first start as a pro with the 12th man. New England, game went to overtime. And then Miami in Seattle with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. So without question, the biggest test we're going to see so far for Seattle. I think they live up to it, though. I don't expect them just to get routed here. It's not like Detroit's offense is fully clicked yet either, but this is, hands down the best game on this slate. It has the highest total by 10 points of the 2. What, though, at quarterback stands out to you the most? And are you willing to get a little bit ugly with, like, Tyler Huntley's been with the team for exactly 2 weeks now, but he can run. We saw Malik Willis last week run on this team, and the Titans gave up 188 rushing yards, which is surprising, but was the case. Kind of a proxy for maybe what you see tonight with this offense. And then Will Levis, who finds ways to shoot himself in the foot constantly, but Miami's defense hasn't been super impressive either.
Right. I think I'm just playing Geno and Goff for the most part. And I'm not certain how many lineups I'll run tonight if I end up playing 150 or something, which is usually the case. I get bored throughout the day and then end up finding myself throwing 150 in. Then you inevitably have to play some of all these guys. But right now, when I look at it, it's priced like a main slate, but it's not a main slate. So I don't think there's as much separation as there should be in price and ownership for the top quarterbacks and the bad quarterbacks. Goff and Geno, the game total is the best. The defenses on both sides, I think, are a little suspect. Detroit's been had in the secondary a little bit. Seattle has a ton of injuries on defense.
Yeah.
They've lived up to expectations largely because of opponent, but they've also seen some growth from players like Boye Mafe, who's been awesome off the edge. Second-round pick formerly, is finally developed. He's out of this game. Their front seven is decimated by injuries right now, which could be an avenue for Detroit to move the ball with their running backs and their offensive line, even without Frank Ragnow. It's still a very good unit. So I agree with the total in the game. The quarterbacks are by far the more talented 2 on the slate. And the ownership isn't that different. We're talking everybody sort of parked in a narrow range. Levis being the lowest at 17, Geno the most at 37, Goff and Huntley parked between 20 and 25. I mean, this is pretty spread. And when we have the situation, I don't think enough people are playing the Seattle-Detroit game.
I feel like the unknown here is Tyler Huntley. I feel like he's a big time unknown in this spot, because you're still looking at a guy who is capable of rushing. He has multiple 70+ yard rushing games in his career. He's certainly not Lamar Jackson, but he was the poor man's Lamar Jackson in Baltimore for a while, right? They clearly had him in there as like a Lamar Jackson archetype behind him, but he is starting. He's only been with the team for 2 weeks. What if they just run him a lot? Like what if it's just one of these situations where it's like, look, there's no way you're learning this playbook, Mike McDaniel playbook this quick. What if you just see a lot of rushing attempts out of Tyler Huntley tonight?
That's possible. And while he can run, I don't think he's like super good at it on the scale of, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers to Lamar Jackson. He's probably like parked dead in the middle. So I don't think we're dealing with a dynamic rusher. He's just a guy that doesn't run like a 5.2 40. So you can do stuff. And I don't know. They have the same guy in Skylar Thompson ahead of him, who's arguably maybe more mobile than Tyler Huntley. And they don't use him as a rusher. The only difference there is Skylar Thompson's been with the team longer, so theoretically he would know more of the playbook. But yeah, I'm not really sure what they're going to do with Thompson, or excuse me, with Huntley on the ground. He's also older. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're basically talking ourselves into Huntley off like one good game with Baltimore. And since then, like he was in a Millie Maker winning lineup that week. And I don't know that he's really shown anything at any other point in the season. I will say he has great weapons and the matchup's bad. So honestly, I might just fall back on him a little bit more than like a Levis, because you have McDaniels, your play caller, and he's awesome at putting his skill position players in position to succeed. So if he can kind of be like the point guard of the offense and actually put the ball where it's supposed to, maybe that could be how he gets there. If I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm still not using Tyler Huntley as the focal point of the offense. When you have Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Achane, I just can't justify having a lot of designed runs for Huntley when those are your skill position players.
I'm with you for what it's worth, but I do think I prefer Huntley over Will Levis here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, your point that you made first, I think, is important, though, that like with Goff, Smith, and Huntley, and even Levis, their price points aren't separated enough to think that, you know, like Geno, I think, is the best. Geno's probably the best on the slate from a matchup standpoint. Like just the way that this game could go, you could really see Geno Smith as somebody who just very, very much is capable of using his legs just enough. You don't need a ton from him on the ground, right? Like he had 30 rushing yards in week 1 and a rushing touchdown. I don't expect much there. I just expect him to have to throw. And I don't really care if he gets picked off. I don't care if it's inefficient. And he hasn't been inefficient at all. You know, he's completing 75% of his passes. Not super exciting stuff, but, you know, 289 yards passing last week, 327 against New England in week 2. Week 1, they didn't need to do a whole lot, but only 171. Geno looks real good in this one. You're also getting, you know, Metcalf at a reasonable price point, Jackson Smith and Jigba at 5,500. A bad tight end position. You have Noah Fant at 3,500. Just easy to stack this team up. I would go Geno, Goff, Huntley, Willis, or I'm sorry, Will Levis.
I agree with that exact order. That is the exact order I would have them in. And I think Geno, I would bump him slightly ahead of Goff for these reasons. And this is what you did as well. Matchup, secondary, it's a little bit better for him. Detroit with Goff, they're going to be throwing into the strength of Seattle's defense right now. Again, all of Seattle's injuries are in their front 7, not their back end. So hypothetically, a team that's very willing to run the ball with Montgomery and Gibbs, that should be an avenue of success for them. I think the volume is lower for Goff than Geno on this slate. And that's kind of just been Seattle's identity under Grubb anyway. They want to throw, and it just so happens that the weakness, if you're picking one for Detroit's defense, is on their back end.
100%. Also, Tyler Huntley, I want to be very clear about this. Tyler Huntley's not very good. Okay. He's not. I think people assume, like you said, because he had 1 or 2 good games that he's not very good. I watch embarrassingly an embarrassing amount of preseason football, Matt. Because
don't be embarrassed by this. This is you should be proud of you. You should be proud of yourself.
I was gonna say, if there's one person on earth, literally on earth, that I can confide in for my, you know, degenerate preseason football betting, which actually it's betting preseason sides is more profitable than a regular season.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't care what anybody says. It's they yell at you for being a degenerate. You're like, wait a second, the books have just as much or less information on these games than you and I do if you're willing to spend the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just true. Anyway, I've watched enough preseason football this year as well to know that Tyler Huntley's not very good. But aren't you a little bit intrigued to find out? Like, I'm willing to pay a little bit to find out today, Matt. Like, I bet the over 24.5 rushing yards, that's at 32.5 now. So his rushing prop is creeping heavy. It's up 8 yards since a day ago. There's some expectations that he runs. You know what else I bet? You'll appreciate this. Jalen Waddle over half a rushing yard at plus 202.
Yeah, I do like that a lot.
Yeah.
Why is that half a yard? They use the backs in the run game.
The receivers, yeah.
Excuse me, yes.
He has a rushing attempt in 2 of his first 3 games. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mike McDaniels does a little bit of weird stuff here and some trickery. I thought at plus 200, like north of 200, that's not the worst value here. Obviously, you can't really devig something like that, but I'll take my chances at 2-1, plus 2-1.
Absolutely. I like that bet.
Is there anything else we even need to get into at quarterback? Because I think Geno and Goff are the clear 1s and 2s. And then there's a clear second tier, which is Huntley, and then the clear third tier, which is Will Levis.
I'll say this. Pricing is extremely tight tonight. You need to find some really dusty guys at the skill position players. The reason I still don't want to punt quarterback as my concession I'm making to get studs is you're not getting that much salary. You go from like Geno to Huntley, you get $500. You can't really use that effectively. But if you do that at receiver or running back, I think there are ways you can still field pretty good lineups and then get the studs you want. So just right now, it's a personal preference. If ownership changes drastically, maybe I'll change my mind on this, but I would prefer to make concessions somewhere else.
All right. So this just occurred to me. Why is it that in my mind, tell me if I'm wrong here. Why is it in my mind that last year, Will Levis was the optimal play on a 2-game primetime slate?
That might have been the case. I can't remember that.
I think he was.
It's not terribly surprising, I suppose. There's only 4 options. I mean, even if you just have like a game with really weird outcomes, could be something that happened. I don't remember it, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Can somebody pull this up for me, please? Can somebody pull this up? Find it for me, please. Will Levis. I think it was. I think it was Titans-Falcons or something. Somebody pull it up if it was a 2-game Monday night slate. Because I remember you and me talking about it and being like, yeah, it's tough to get to Levis today. He's been terrible. And then just went out and had a huge game. I'm almost certain he did. But I don't know. Yeah, here. Okay, so I don't know if this was, but against the Falcons, Matt, he had 4 passing touchdowns, 26 DK points.
You don't see that every day out of him.
You don't. Someone will remember and pull it up. Chat is good for this. We can bank that. Someone will find this. But S&P says it was against the Dolphins. Oh my God, was it? Was it against the Dolphins?
That's pretty sick.
Yeah. Jake said it was against the Dolphins too. Okay. He had 21 DraftKings points. It was against this Dolphins team. Yeah, I'm not ruling Levis out, not because of that, but because there's only 4 quarterbacks to talk about. And, anything goes. And at the end of the day, Matt, as we can move over to running backs here, at the end of the day, he does still have DeAndre Hopkins, clearly a lesser version of Hopkins, but we saw last week that Hopkins isn't totally washed yet. He had, what did he, last week he was decent, right? 6 for 73 and a touchdown. And he still has Calvin Ridley. Okongwu isn't the worst guy that you could have. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears aren't the worst pass catching backs you could have. Like, there are at least some weapons there, better than last year.
He just has the worst offensive line in football in front of him. So sometimes he doesn't have the time to get the ball to those guys. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty decent situation outside of the offensive line. I don't know, man. It's not like Miami's defense is fantastic, so I wouldn't rule it out either.
How about the running backs today? You talk about the D line for Seattle. What does that do when it comes to Gibbs and Montgomery for you?
I'm really struggling with this, and this is the pricing thing. You kind of have to decide if you want to go down and take a shot on Spears or maybe even like a Jeff Wilson, Jalen Wright type as your concession. Because if you play Geno, you play Goff, you can't really jam in two stud running backs and the stud receivers. So I don't know. I'm kind of debating like one of Tajay Spears' games so far. He was injured in game. Last game, his opportunity wasn't great. Pollard is one of the highest on backs on the slate. Is that a spot of potential pivot? I think maybe the offensive line is terrible for that team, so that's another thing. The real backs I want to play are the Detroit Seattle ones, but you can't play everyone in that game, and they're all expensive. Detroit is the timeshare. Montgomery and Gibbs, but again, Seattle's D-line front seven is pretty banged up right now. They should be focused on the run first game plan. And then Kenneth Walker back. The only hole you can really poke there is Charbonnet looked fine when Kenneth Walker was out. And the reason Kenneth Walker keeps getting hurt is he has these monster workloads. So is it actually the same workload it was prior to his injury? And I'm not sure about that.
By
It's
the way,
a hard
Brad,
running back slate, man. I think the hardest of the year.
couldn't agree more. I'm having a really tough time there. And it's even more difficult because you have Kenneth Walker coming back past a tough matchup to begin with. And you know, how much work does Zach Charbonnet get? He acquitted himself quite well in Walker's stead. Now he's back.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. So would you be shocked to see a 60-40 snap share? I wouldn't. We saw something close to that in week one. Brad Kaufman with a super chat came in first in a single entry, 3,200 people. Thanks for the great analysis every Sunday, gentlemen. Hey, appreciate you, man. And congratulations. That's awesome. He also asked, does this get me the free month? Jordan said yes. Brad, I'm sorry for the wrong information. Jordan, how long have we been doing this, brother? Can you turn your mic on? How long have you and I been doing the Hall of Fame segment? And you told him yes. You gave the man false hope. That's all right. Congrats, though, Brad. It's top three in a field of 5,000 or more. No matter the entry fee, could be a 5-cent entry, doesn't matter. Just stochastic.com/HOF. We got 6 beautiful avatars. Pick whichever one you want. Use it wherever it is you play. And then if you take down a win and it's not chopped with more than 3 people, well, it's not more than a 3-way chop. So you and 2 others, because we'd lose our ass on showdowns. Hit us up at Stochastic HOF on Twitter. Leave a nice message if you'd like. Tag Matt and myself. We love seeing that stuff. But yeah, in the event that you do, you get a free month, $200 value of Sims Max, NFL, or any sport you want. $200 value. It used to be you could win once a calendar year. Now it's 3 times. So actually more than that, as a matter of fact. But the silver tier, you win twice. Not only do you get another month, $200 value of Sims, so NFL, whatever you want, you get a week of another sport as on top of it. So like you want NBA, now you have NFL and NBA just for using the avatar. You win a third time, get gold tier, $550 value, every single tool for every sport on the site, including all of the Sims, no limitations on all of that, is yours. You could win $60 and pull that in gold tier. People have done it already. And of course, you want to join the Ring of Honor. Any 20K plus win gets you this beauty. Custom engraved Stochastic Hall of Fame ring. I got to order some of these tomorrow. In the display case that spins. Matt, aren't they just beautiful?
Yeah, they are. Especially if you have like, I don't know, some sort of man den viewing area where you've got all your sports memorabilia, you're sweating out your games, throw that right in there.
Or the home office.
The home office is a good one too. Yeah.
Right? Like right on the desk, someone walks in, you point to that, you tell them to be quiet, that you're working, exert dominance. Anyway, stochastic.com/HOF, rock that avatar. Yeah, I'm having a tough time. And congrats again, Brad. I'm having a tough time with running backs here. There's nobody that jumps off the page at me outside of Devon Achane. I still really like him. I know he struggled last week. I know he's expensive, but at the same time, at home, they are 2.5-point favorites. They're not in Seattle against Seattle with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. I still think that there's there's a lot of life left in Devon Achane. Absolutely in this spot. You just have to get your playmakers the football, and I think they'll prioritize it tonight.
I agree with you. I think he's completely fine. My first instinct on this slate was kind of just to onslaught this Seattle-Detroit game. I was worried about ownership, but honestly, now looking at the board, I don't think it's owned enough. And players like Tony Pollard are extremely owned. That I think is very, very risky in a game like this. Their matchup is suspect against Miami. You know, they still come in as a slight underdog behind a very bad offensive line. I think there is a potential that Pollard's role has been inflated by the game Tajay Spears left early. Their coaching staff has also been vocal about wanting to get Tajay Spears more involved. That's not surprising to me. Like going back to last year, Spears kind of ran laps around Tony Pollard. So I'm honestly a little surprised. Pollard has been in the game over Spears to begin with. If you look at efficiency, it's not even close. Spears still dominating Tony Pollard. So I don't know. That is a very interesting situation. In our Sims, I got a ton of him. And I don't know. I don't really buy that. I think I would rather go all the way down. But rather than, make a decision on something like that, I'm considering playing both Detroit backs together, then using a Walker or an Achane in lineups with it and punting at receiver and tight end instead. And I'm not sure the double Detroit running back is going to be popular. People just don't like doing this historically. But there's a chance they have more rushing attempts than a normal game with the matchup against Seattle's banged up front seven. They both play anyway. This is a run-based team with a high run rate over expectation. And then you add on a guy like Achane in your flex, no issues, or he would be in your running back spot. One of the Detroit guys would be in your flex. But I kind of like that build. It's weird. It's unique. You can still play Geno or Goff. You do have to forego one of your receivers and probably your tight end, but I don't hate that, honestly. I'm kind of okay with this concession and having Gibbs, Montgomery, and Achane being my top three backs on this slate and using them a lot together.
I can see it. And, I'm looking at total team rushing attempts props. It's actually a lot for some of these teams. So for some reason they don't have, and I'm just looking at Caesars right now, but they don't have total team rushing attempts for Seattle, but Miami's at 29.5. Factor in a rushing quarterback though. Tennessee's at 23.5. Detroit's at 29.5 as well. So, if we're talking around 30 rushing attempts for this team with a quarterback who doesn't run the football, maybe you're right. Maybe the move here is just play some Gibbs Montgomery lineups. But I mean, if you're doing the Gibbs Montgomery lineups, are you able to get to Achane?
Yes, but you have to punt your tight end and one of your receiver spots.
You've tried it though?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't simmed it, but I've just been checking if they're possible. It is possible.
I'm looking at it now. Like if you just threw Titans D in there, or actually Dolphins are only $100 more. So if you threw Dolphins D in, Geno, Gibbs, Montgomery, Devon Achane, let me throw like Smith and Jigba. And I think, this is going to lead you to a probably Noah Fant type build that gets you 5,700. Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, or Hopkins, Lockett. All right, it actually is doable. In this case, though, and maybe you build it differently than I did and you went full out punt at wide receiver with one of them, which would make sense. If you build it the way I did, you're not getting the St. Brown, Hill, or Metcalf, but you are getting a really balanced build, and guys like JSN, Jameson Williams, and Waddle all have a lot of upside. I actually don't know if that's an insane build either, especially if you're saying, hey, I'm playing Gibbs and Montgomery. Maybe St. Brown isn't totally necessary in this lineup either.
Yeah, I'm going to sim this on the back end, but my lineup that I was just messing around with looked very much like the one you described. But I'm curious when we get to the sims at the end of the show, how this build is actually going to grade out. And I think it'll grade out just fine. You can, make a couple concessions off what you built to and maybe get up to a St. Brown, if you want to play like Boyd or something in your lineup. So there are ways to do it. We'll see how they grade out, but it's kind of an open slate. You do have to make some sort of concession, but I'm kind of okay with it for what we have right now.
I think I am too. We'll build some of these out. We'll build one out before we go. Rance asked, does Sims include all showdowns, even Sunday early slate? Yeah, dude, the Sims includes literally everything. So, like, if you were to go into the Sims, and by the way, this is not just a regular Sim, single lineup Sim includes Showdown as well. But if you were to go into the Sims, had you looked yesterday, Matt, you would have seen every slate on there plus every single Showdown. I'm talking like Philly Bucks Showdown, right? I'm talking Browns Raiders Showdowns. Everything is in there. Sims it out for you wonderfully. The Sims had me sitting real nice. Yet Jake DeWitt said he was first in the millie and ended up falling late as well. We were going back and forth on Twitter. We're both threw the Sims in there. I know he did. I did as well. Capped Najee Harris exposure, which definitely helped. Bijan crushed me. Ben told me, and I didn't see this, that Bijan had a receiving touchdown that got called back. And that would have put me I didn't know until he told me, and I went back and looked, and I lost by 7, and that would have put me in second. But point is, that was a Sims lineup in a 3 max that just had me competitive, finished top 15. We'll take it all day long. We had a 50K yesterday we saw with the Sims. I think there were other big ones, people just shouting the tools out throughout the entirety of the night after that afternoon slate ended.
Yeah, it's nice to see the shout outs because you and I have been preaching like the tools kind of sell themselves. They do one basic thing for me, and that's remove all of the bad lineups that I would have played otherwise. You get instant feedback in the form of your ROI percentage, immediately tells you, is this lineup good or bad? Are there dupes? How good is it? And you remove all the nonsense you might have been playing earlier with an optimizer or something like that that gives you no feedback whatsoever. And if you have a personal take, you can still test it. If you want to play a super contrarian quarterback, what the Sims tool is going to do for you is give you the best lineups with that player. So then you're not playing some junk that has like 1% on guys. You might have a take that you want to exploit, and the Sims is going to tell you the best way to do it.
It's a great point. That's the difference between a Sims and an optimizer for sure.
Yeah, you have no feedback on the optimizer, only your own personal takes.
Right. The Sims are taking ownership. They're taking leverage. They're simulating what the field should look like. It's amazing. And I do make some of my own decisions, Matt. Like I probably didn't need to, but I bumped Pickens and Fields yesterday. I just really
like you should.
Yeah, right, exactly. And wanted to get to some more of that. There were a few spots that I ended up bumping, and a few spots that I brought down a little bit too. And it's good to use your own thoughts sometimes, as long as it's grounded in something, right? Instead of just arbitrarily like, oh, I'm going to boost this, I'm going to bring that down. That'll get you into trouble. But as you said, even if you were to make some of those things, decisions that were kind of mistakes, it's still going to give you the best lineups with those decisions that you've made. And that's what matters.
Absolutely. And projections are very good. Ownership is very good. They're very accurate, but they're not perfect. Maybe you're listening to a show on a Sunday morning and you hear somebody that has a big following saying they like a player. That could influence ownership a couple percentages. Maybe you come down on that guy, and it's something as simple as, you just take a 5% ROI boost and bring them down a little bit. Or you hear something coach speak wise, people don't actually know if it's true or not, but you think it might be. You can make a slight projection boost on a player. There's a lot of ways you can put in your own personal opinions. Or even if you just want, sometimes you have spots where guys are like super smash plays and you'll get 70% of them in the Sims. Maybe it's a risk management perspective. You don't want your whole day to be ruined if so-and-so gets hurt. Then you can use an exposure cap and flatten yourself out to other players at the position. There's tons of ways to use it. And the bottom line is no matter what personal stuff you put into it, you're still getting the best lineups with whatever your take was.
Exactly. Najee Harris, a good example of that yesterday, or Britton Covey when we bumped him on the live show.
That was nice.
Yeah, it helps. And then it gives you the best lineups with them in there. But yeah, link in the description and in chat, you'll see it. There's only one link now. So anyone, if you guys, even if you're not ready to sign up, you just want to check them out. We have 4 different subscriptions for anyone down to basic player, just doing it as a hobby, all the way up to someone taking this very, very seriously. We've got something for everyone. The light and the core version, I think, are clearly the best for anyone looking to hand build lineups, get Sims, but also sim out some lineups and some smaller field stuff and have access to the boom bust tools and everything like that as well. And if you ever have any questions, guys, just hit us up in the Discord, which you get access to at any package, or on Twitter. Happy to help. The rest of running backs here, I'm a little bit gun shy on Walker and Charbonnet today. Do you know Detroit's allowed 5 receptions for 17 yards to running backs this year? Now I know it's a small sample, but it was kind of crazy when I look at it. I'm like, okay, did they face running backs that don't get, that don't catch the ball? They faced Kyron Williams, Rashad White, and James Conner. Like those are the 3 teams they faced, and they've allowed no passing production to them receiving. Then I go back and I look, I'm like, okay, well, let me see something. Last year, what did they do against running backs? They allowed the 2nd fewest receptions to running backs in the league. 58 receptions all season to running backs last year, Matt. That was surprising.
I think their front 7 is just underrated.
Yeah.
And people know Hutchinson, of course. He's an absolute wagon. But he's not the only one in that front 7 who's been playing well this year. They're pretty deep on the defensive line. Guys like Ali McNeil are in there playing a good amount. DJ Reader came over for this team. He's excellent on the interior. And they have this like rotation of pass rushers on the other side. Marcus Davenport plays a fair amount. But their linebackers have been good too, which makes sense. They invested a ton of capital in linebackers. They took Jack Campbell in the 1st round just a year ago. He's starting to play like an actual contributor for this team. So yeah, I mean, like with most of your resources invested in the front 7 over the last couple of years prior to this year, because then they hammered secondary this offseason, I'm not surprised they're better against the run. And especially you mentioned the pass catching backs. You've got really athletic safeties. You've got really athletic linebackers. Jack Campbell's pretty good in coverage. But when you have safeties like Kirby Joseph, who's amazing in coverage, at least so far this year, and Brian Branch, those are the guys that are lining up on linebackers a lot. Or lining up on running backs a lot. So it's tough to catch the ball in Detroit's defense if you're coming out of the backfield.
It really is. I don't know where to go here. I'm also a little bit confused. Do we see like with Kenneth Walker coming back from this it was a chest injury? No, an oblique, sorry, oblique injury that they didn't want to rush him back from. Do you have a guess on the split?
I think it's going to be closer to like a 70-30 split. Earlier in the year, it was almost like 90-10. Walker was dominating it. This isn't a new injury for him. He had this injury last year. I almost think I shouldn't speculate, but I mean, he might just have like some sort of sports hernia thing that he hasn't got surgically repaired, and they don't want him to miss any time. So I don't know. Regardless, I think there's significant downside with Walker on the opportunity side. And then you can't really play Charbonnet because he's still priced almost like the feature back from when Walker was out. So you don't even have like a discount on the backup.
I think if you're talking about cheap backs here, I don't know what your recourse is. There's Spears, who is clearly playing second fiddle to Tony Pollard. There's Jeff Wilson, who's behind Devon Achane without question. I don't know. I mean, do you think that there's a path for one of these guys to get there this week?
Probably not. There's some like narrative stuff. Coaches in Tennessee have been talking about getting Spears more work, which I think makes sense. Most efficiency metrics have him pretty damn far ahead of Pollard. And then Miami, I was surprised it wasn't a timeshare to begin with. Like they prefer, at least historically, not to use Achane as a feature back with his injury history. But we've seen it now. I don't really think they're going to involve Jalen Wright a ton. He's the rookie, the explosive one. Jeff Wilson just might be dust at this point in his career, so it doesn't appear like they want to give him a significant workload. But they have in the past. I don't know. That is at least worth a dart if you're playing some of the very large field stuff. But anything else, I don't think I really want to get there. And it's certainly nothing more than a sprinkle.
Yeah, Jalen Wright played 21% of snaps, Wilson 23% last week. I mean, Achane's still the clear guy there. If you were to rank these running backs up top between, Achane, Gibbs, Montgomery, Pollard, you can throw Walker and Charbonnet in there at the price point, but for me, they're kind of down. Specifically, Zach Charbonnet. You mentioned they haven't brought his price back down yet. That's a really tough spot to get to, unless you're trying to be just so different that you're willingly sacrificing making the right decision to play somebody that's north of 6K and the second running back on his own team. But I would go, I think I still put Achane number 1, followed by, interchangeably Gibbs and Montgomery. And then I'd put Pollard in next. What about you? How are you doing it?
I think I'm the same as you. The only place I have a hesitation right now is with Pollard. Considering putting Walker ahead of him, but don't feel good about it. And I reserve the right to change that later in the day. It's
I
close
wouldn't
between
blame
those
you.
guys.
I would not blame you at all.
This might just
Pollard
be
is
my own
actually
bias, though.
Pollard's more popular than I thought too.
That's
Second
part of the
highest
reason I
owned,
don't like him.
I know, second highest owned running back. I mean, he's basically the same as Jahmyr Gibbs. Montgomery's at 38%, Walker at 36, Devon Achane at 51%. So, it's not crazy. Spears is the guy that's getting no ownership. Charbonnet, Wilson. We still have Mostert in because we ran this before we got that news. So I think you see Jeff Wilson come up a little bit. Achane probably comes up even more. Maybe you get a little bit of Jalen Wright. Are there any guys we haven't talked about at running back that you want to at least dig into a little bit?
I don't think so. All these teams are basically running some form of committee. Some are closer to a 50-50, some are a little more split, but yeah, I think we hit on everyone of consequence of note.
All right, let's talk wide receivers here.
For what it's worth, I saw a comment in the chat. I don't think Miami has a bad run defense. They're currently middle of the pack in yards per carry allowed. They're 7th in PFF's run defense efficiency. I don't agree with that.
No, they haven't been that bad.
Yeah, they haven't been bad in run defense. I don't think it's like a particularly strong matchup for Pollard or Spears.
They got carved by James Cook, but
Well,
still,
that is a good point. There's a small sample, and you need to actually evaluate the opponents too.
Yeah, and they only gave up 108 rushing yards in that game, but also like that game, it was over before it started. But James Cook kind of had his way with them, right? So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to learn here. I mean, you look at Buffalo, who hadn't been giving up much at all. They got absolutely decimated everywhere yesterday, man. Through the air, on the ground. That defense looked like a shell of the former self we'd seen through the first 3 weeks. It's just these small samples make things pretty tough to evaluate. And I think the Dolphins are a good example of that, but we don't know. We don't know yet. I'd say they're probably like league average if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's good context you provided.
What do you think about receivers? It's so funny too, because you and I last week, remember Monday, we're like, yeah, you can play anybody. You had cheap Jags receivers. You had cheap Buffalo receivers. You had like Jamar Chase was the only expensive guy, it felt like, in that whole game. McLaurin was cheap. Brian Robinson, everybody was cheap. Everybody across the board except Jamar Chase. And he ended up being rightfully so, like 80, 90% owned. Today, not the same. St. Brown, Hill, Metcalf. I'll even throw a lot of these 5K guys in. JSN, Williams, Waddle, Lockett, Hopkins, Ridley. We had a lot of value last week. We do not have a lot of good value this week at wide receiver.
We don't. You automatically come into this slate with the inability to play Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyreek Hill together unless you play like a Tajay Spears, or you need to significantly punt at some other position to jam those two into lineups. Now, we'll see on ownership. There's a chance that this separates wide enough where I'll consider Tyreek Hill more. But with the quarterback change to Huntley making his first start with the team, Amon-Ra St. Brown projects significantly better. So he's a priority for me, just 300 more. Trying to get him as the expensive receiver. Playing one of them, easy enough to do. Playing two is pretty challenging. So I'm not sure where I'm going to end up on with Tyreek Hill. Plus, man, like his volume in this offense, he has 11 targets combined over the last 2 weeks. It's not even like they're peppering him with targets like New York does with Neighbors or something. And the quarterback plays so bad. The quarterback play is bad, and then he's not even getting targets. So I don't know where this stands. You would assume they fix this at some point. You just, honestly, it's negligence to not have Tyreek Hill more involved. So I don't know. We'll see where ownership settles on this, but where are you on the Tyreek Hill thing? I'm nervous with my current stance as a fade.
I really don't disagree. It's concerning. We have seen games before where like a Skylar Thompson had, or a Mike, or whoever it was, had a big, provided Tyreek Hill with big numbers. But I don't get it either. The fact that he's seen 11 combined targets over the last 2 weeks, it's really shocking to me. I mean, I guess you could explain it away in Buffalo, but last week, it doesn't make any sense. And I still think he's probably overpriced. He can break one for sure. The problem with Tyreek Hill is that long ball downfield, the likelihood of that hitting now is so much lower with any of these guys instead of Tua. Like, he's great after the catch, and they should at least just try and get him the ball early and let him do work with his legs afterwards. But when you don't have that downfield threat, that connection that he had with Tua, it takes the top off. His ceiling is just like, he does not have the same ceiling anymore.
With the difference we have in projection is absurd. I did not realize it was so wide. It's nearly 6 points.
Well, have you seen his receiving prop today?
I haven't seen the prop, but I have a guess how low it is based on his volume and efficiency with the quarterback changes.
Take a guess.
56.5.
Close. Last I looked, it was 49.5.
That's crazy.
49.5. FanDuel 51, but Pinnacle has it at 49.5. So that tells you a lot right there. It really does. 49.5 at $7,900.
Yeah, man, I think I'm going to have a pretty gnarly fade on him. And the other reason we hinted at this is there's no cheap receivers. There are teams with good wide receiver threes, like Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're priced up because they've had pretty good games recently. The teams that have bad wide receiver threes are in just like the gnarliest timeshares. So the price, or I guess the typical price range where you get Wan'Dale Robinson and these like Greg Dortch, like that archetype of player does not exist on this slate. The only player I think that fills that role is Tyler Boyd.
JSN has the same receiving yards prop as Hill today.
What do you think Hill's ownership comes in at? People will still click him.
They'll still click him. Yeah, 20, 25.
Right now we have 25. Yeah, that's probably about right. We have him as the 6th most owned receiver. I'm not surprised by this. 25%. Good observation by you.
I just think he's harder to click. I checked already. I just think he's harder to click than St. Brown at the same price. Metcalf at $1,000 cheaper. JSN at almost $1,500 less. Like, even Jamison Williams. Okay, so here's the funny thing, right? Let's use Jamison Williams as not like a complete one-to-one proxy here, but Jamison Williams could break one loose on 6 targets and have a 70-yard touchdown. Like, he's not that much different obviously he's slower because no one's as fast as Hill, but like, he has breakaway speed. You can hit him downfield. He has a better quarterback, and he's so much cheaper. He's $2,300 cheaper. Yes, Hill is better, but Jamison Williams has a markedly better and more accurate quarterback. So
100%. The only problem I run into with Jamison Williams is my preferred structure with my lineup is 2 Detroit backs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Goff or Geno Smith. But, if you use Geno, what are you running, like 4 Detroit guys with no QB? Then if you play Jamison, you're like looking at 5 Detroit players in a lineup. Eventually DraftKings restricts you and you can't play that many.
Exactly. No, I get it. I'm not saying Williams is a priority by any stretch, but I
think he's awesome.
He's good. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's going to have games where he just disappears. Like last week, he just disappeared. But you look at his first 2 weeks, he had 20 targets.
I think he's going to be a focal point of the offense really for the whole season, man. His routes are like, he's not missing anything in terms of snaps on the field. They just have a pretty good receiving core. You get Laporta involved. You get Montgomery's an underrated receiver. And then, of course, you have Gibbs. With Amon-Ra getting his almost every single week and then not that much to go around with all these talented players because they want to run, there will be games with that we just see this happen.
Ben and I have a big disagreement on Williams.
Does Ben hate him?
I just think he's really good. I really like his skill set, and Ben has him in the bucket of like he's okay.
I was
I
very
like it.
uncertain on him this year.
What's that?
I was very uncertain on him this year.
I mean, what an additional piece to have in this offense that hasn't had a wide receiver too.
They made
Yeah.
a bet on him. I mean, he's a first round pick, so there were signs that he was a potential breakout.
Who are your
Plus,
five? Go ahead.
he'd barely played because he couldn't stop gambling and getting hurt.
Yeah, right.
He's one of us.
He is. He's yeah.
He's watching right now. He's got to be.
What's your favorite? Yeah, that'd be sweet, wouldn't it? What's your favorite mid-range receivers today in the 5K range? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that 5K range. I know mine.
My two favorites are Smith and Jigba and Jamison Williams. We've kind of already hinted and talked a little bit about both those guys. Smith and Jigba appears to just be slowly but surely overtaking Tyler Lockett. Makes sense with age. Tyler Lockett should probably just be more of your reliable number 3 than someone you actually rely on at this point. Jamison Williams, it's not just his game-breaking ability. He has a pretty good role in the offense. It'll fluctuate a little bit week to week, but no problem there. That's also just the game I want a lot of pieces of. So Lockett being pretty close to Smith and Jigba, I'll just take the 500 and find a way to get that 500 and use Smith and Jigba a little bit more. And then I'm probably not going to find myself to as much Ridley and Hopkins and Jalen Waddle for that matter, just on a default, not playing a lot of that game. Down there, it for sure would be Ridley. Hopkins still is barely playing. It was kind of crazy to see him have that game, and he only played 25 snaps.
I know. Targeted 7 times on 25 snaps.
Still out-targeted, or not out-targeted, still out-snapped by Treylon Burks.
Who just stinks.
Yes, sad to see. Sad to see.
All right, here's the tough one. What's that?
Okay. Who's the tough one?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say Ridley's the tough one for me.
Yeah. 59. Yeah, I prefer definitely JSN's my number 1 there. But Williams too at that price is good. Number 3. I think number 3 probably is still Ridley after. Yeah, I think I'd still go JSN, Williams, Ridley, Lockett. But I can understand why Lockett's popular. Maybe I have to go Lockett because that extra $500, $600, $700, $900 might actually go a long way.
We have Lockett 2 points clear of Ridley in projections too.
I know. Here's the tough one for you. This will not be fun. Favorite sub 5K guy?
Oh, Tyler Boyd. It's not even close.
I know, but it's not fun saying that name.
But he's the only one that plays.
He's the only one down there. I know.
You don't like clicking Tyler Boyd, but you don't have any other choice. There's nobody that plays. The 13 targets.
What is that, dude? What is that?
I don't know, man. I truly don't know. I don't know what some of these teams do sometimes.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was looking. My fault, dude. Tim Boyle. I clicked Boyle and I was like, that can't be right. I was looking at Boyle. I was like, how did I not see this last week on the targets for Boyd? But Boyd has 14 total targets on the year.
That's what I thought you were referencing.
I clicked it. I saw the BOY. I was like, how did I miss this? Where I've been living under a rock. It's like, that can't be right. And then I said, wait a second. Tyler Boyd's not white.
He does have the second most targets on the team.
I know.
Tied with Pollard.
Tied with Tony Pollard. He is the only option down there. He's the only option down there.
That's a little bit of hyperbole, but everyone else who you would consider in that range has like a 30% snap share max.
Yeah, including one Tim Patrick.
He's splitting with Raymond.
Mm-hmm.
They basically just use whatever receiver fits their personnel package because they're very, very different. They look wildly different. And sometimes they use too tight in Detroit. Detroit uses more two back sets than a lot of teams. Those all come at the expense of the wide receiver 3. Tennessee is tricky. They might have a guy you could use in Burks. That all depends on how healthy and how many snaps you think Hopkins plays. I think there's significant risk that it continues to drop for Burks as Hopkins is further removed from the injury. Seattle doesn't have a wide receiver 3. And then Miami might be the trickiest of all because they use a ton of 2 tight end sets and then they have no clear wide receiver 3 and they use a fullback a lot.
Oh, it's terrible. The only thing I'll say about Patrick is he did play 50% of snaps last week to 7% for Khalif Raymond. Only ran 13 routes.
He has so many blocking snaps. I'm looking at it right now.
It's crazy.
That matters for Dan Campbell, though.
Yeah, it does. So maybe we're seeing that shift. I'm just trying to throw anything out there, Matt. Like if you said, all right, Tim Patrick or Khalif Raymond, I'd have to go Tim Patrick, but it's gross. Treylon Burks is just, he's dead out there. There's really nothing. And like Braxton Berrios on a team where you and I are talking about how can we even play Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, man, I think it's going to be cut it off at Boyd. I mean, you can sprinkle these guys, of course. If you're playing 150, you'll end up with like a lineup or two of some of these guys, but man, feels bad.
Those snap shares for Tennessee are gross too. Anyway.
They're all, we'll get to tight end. The fact that these teams are all using 12 personnel at a decent rate really kind of muddles this too.
Let's go tight ends. Let's do it. How many people we got hanging out with us right now? Let's see. What do we got? 8:30. Nice.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
You guys are the best. If you don't mind, take a second, hit that thumbs up. This would be a good time to tell people to subscribe and help us get to 100K, Matt, while we have almost 900 people with us.
Yeah, celebrate with us. We're almost there.
4 logos for live before lock if we hit.
Yeah, we're going to do something fun on stream, probably on the live before lock, so I'm not wasted for the entire day when I have to work. And
yeah, you don't need that.
I go to a meeting immediately after this. That would be great.
That'd be, yeah, an AA meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Tight ends. And of course, guys, sponsor the show, DraftKings Pick 6. All of our tools, for what it's worth. Every package has the DraftKings Pick 6 optimizer built in, which is pretty massive. And it's going to bring you a long way. Like using a tool like that against so many people that are just kind of flippantly throwing lineups in there, all overs, ignoring anything, ignoring the plus EV spots. The tools for DraftKings, like a lot of you guys have our tools already, and you can use DraftKings Pick 6. I bet there's a lot of our tools that you don't even use because there's so many of them. Like that's one that you should definitely be using if you're not yet. For over there on DraftKings Pick 6. You guys are already over there, so no need to mention you get the 100% deposit bonus up to $100, but definitely use the tools. Brad
definitely
Kaufman,
use the tools.
Yeah, you got to. Laffy, I'm still here even though you ruined my dreams. I'm sorry, brother. Jordan ruined your dreams by telling you the wrong rules. He knows it's 5,000 plus.
Yeah, that's my bad.
He knows.
That's my bad.
You're good, dude. You're good. You're good. Wood Piece, do you guys prefer boosting ROI or boosting projections when you decide to make adjustments? Great question, Matt.
It is a great question. I try to start with ROI, so that way things don't get crazy. One good example of this that we actually did on a stream live was the Covey news. We had Britton Covey running with the first team, playing more than we expected in warmups. So an exercise we did on stream, we boosted the projection by a half point, went from getting about 5-ish% of him up to 40. So projection boosts can be pretty drastic in the overall output of the sims, but ROI boost is going to bring them up more gradually. So I guess it depends. If you have a very firm stance and you want to get a ton of a player, boost the projection. I prefer the ROI.
I do both, but there's certain times where like deboosting an ROI, you have to do it so much because it's just like all of those lineups. So I will, or to your point with Covey, to boost the ROI wouldn't have been enough with him because he was projected so low given his expected role. So he's a guy that it makes sense to boost projections for. So
yeah, it's nuanced. It'll be slate by slate.
Yeah, you laid that out well. It's exactly how it works. Tight ends. I think Noah Fant is just a necessary evil in this spot against Detroit, especially with, a lot of Geno that I anticipate having. Sam Laporta is okay. He was on the injury list. He's not anymore. He's popular. Noah Fant's popular. I'm just not at all surprised that those two guys are as popular as they are today. But $5,700 Sam Laporta hasn't shown up yet. I'm just not like Sam Laporta is still good. He's going to have one of those games. Sam Laporta is going to have one of those games where he's just good.
He is. I don't know if you want to pay for it, especially when you look at what you're getting in your lineup because of Sam Laporta. It's like, okay, I've got Sam Laporta, but I also have Tajay Spears. I have Sam Laporta, but I also have 50% Tyler Boyd. So I don't know if that's the concession I want to make, like playing some dusty guy to get Sam Laporta when his role hasn't been vastly different than some of the dusty cheap tight ends on this slate. That doesn't mean I'll come in with zero. Sam Laporta is really the only tight end that is a ceiling on this slate, so I don't want to just outright fade him. But there is opportunity cost, so I think that should at least be noted.
Yeah, it should. And he's expensive. Like Sam Laporta should be $5K here, really.
He's like the same price as, is he more expensive than Jameson? I think he is.
By 100. He's 100 more. That's exactly right. And that's the problem. He's more expensive than Lockett by 700. He's more expensive than JSN by 200, more expensive than Williams. What a tough range to get to him.
It is for sure. And he's coming off an injury. I don't know.
Jake DeWitt, what's up, dude? So these YouTube ads mid-show are a scourge on humanity. We keep turning them off. And YouTube, Jordan, we're going to need to check this like each morning pre-show as your pre-show checklist to make sure that they're off. Because, yeah, it's not like we don't turn them on. It's not like we're making enough ad rev on a daily show with no shelf life to leave them on.
YouTube's probably trying to turn them on so they make more money.
Right. Yeah. So the advertisers, we don't need them for this. So let's just add that to the checklist. If in the event that they're actually still on, I have YouTube Premium. I can listen with my phone off and I like it. If you do a lot of YouTube, it'll be the best, whatever it is, like $18 a month you've ever spent. I can promise you that much. But no, I think Noah Fant's the best tight end option today.
I agree with you. I'm going to be playing a ton of Noah Fant. I would not be concerned by the split you see. Snap share, like Pharaoh Brown played more snaps. AJ Barner plays snaps. Those two guys have such high blocking rates. And when you see Noah Fant, 28 snaps, 22 routes. Very, very clear what Noah Fant is on the field to do, and it is not to block. And we have two teams that are basically running nasty tight end timeshares. So that also kind of removes a lot of other options. It's Laporta and Fant for two guys that are in clear receiving roles. And then what do you do with the rest of them? Obviously, for large field stuff, for 150 sets, you're going to sprinkle those guys. But the clarity you get with Fant and Laporta, I think, should be a priority. And then Fant at his price, saving $2,000 and more off Laporta makes a lot of sense to me.
Makes a lot to me too. And then you've got Chiga Kongwu, Jonnu Smith. I had some relatively high hopes for Smith coming into this season. I thought, like, all right, they haven't really had a guy. Maybe they'll use him with Tua, but that kind of goes out the window. Brock Wright will run a handful of routes. None of these other guys are really, like Pharaoh Brown has 2 targets on the season. It's really gross down here. I know you wanted to talk about it. How do you sift through some of this garbage? It's true.
That's exactly what it is. My favorite dusty tight end is Josh Wiley for Tennessee.
Yeah.
I think they're just slowly benching Okonkwo, man. He's been so bad when he's on the field. It's a shame. He's really athletic, but he just can't figure out the actual game of football. And Josh Wiley's the exact opposite. Pretty good at football, not the most dynamic athlete, but their snaps have been converging week over week. Last week it was 30 Okonkwo, 20, 25 for Wiley routes. Okonkwo was at 23, Wiley was at 18. So it's narrowing quite a bit. And then you go and you look at the prices. You get Wiley at the stone minimum. Okonkwo is 3,700. I'll just save all that money and play something that could quickly become like a 50-50 timeshare in this offense. So he's my real favorite grease ball if you made me pick one, and that's excluding Fant and Laporta, who I think are clearly 1-2. Dude, I don't even know if I can rank a fourth. Like who are your favorite dusty guys behind Fant and Laporta, man? Like
It's Wiley.
Wiley's yours too?
He has to be. Yeah, he has to be. You can't. Durham Smythe is he might get a couple of targets, but they're just going to be low value targets. I'm not saying that Wiley's are going to be great by any stretch, but I think, you know, and you're also not banking on him getting a ton of targets, but even, you know, 3-4 targets is going to go a long way. The only other question is, do you look towards like a Nick Van Eck? He's $2,500. Had an end zone target last week that resulted in a touchdown. You know, these are very little things, and none of them are exciting, but they're just not going to. None of these teams, or neither of these teams, Miami or Tennessee, is going to be making many trips to the end zone or to the red zone. You did see Vanette targeted there last game. He's going to play. I mean, what's he getting each week? Like a quarter of the snaps, right? Yeah, like 25,
roughly
30% of snaps.
The problem for me with Vanette is he's blocking on 2/3 of those.
I know. I'm just, you asked me if there's anybody down there. I'm just giving you a guy who actually, he has multiple targets in 2 of 3 games. And that's more you can say for a lot of these other scrubs down here, but it's ugly.
Really ugly. Yeah, man, I guess my advice is probably just play a lot of Fant. Play what you get a Laporta because you have to make pretty big sacrifices to get him. I will certainly be over on Wiley. And then honestly, I think the rest of my tight end strategy is just going to be play what Sims give me. And I imagine if you were to just rank all of the other dust balls outside of the 3 that we like, Jonnu's probably going to be 4 just because of his route share. But man, Jonnu's been terrible.
Horrible.
There's a real chance he gets benched because Durham Smythe, while not dynamic, is very reliable, especially as a blocker.
I mean, listen to this route participation data from last week, and then we'll build a lineup before we get out of here. I know we're running you guys late. Do you have a call right now that you're supposed to be on? You do. Okay. I'm sure you're devastated. Listen to these routes. We'll get right out of here, I promise. 16 for Smith last week, 10 for Julian Hill, 10 for Durham Smythe. I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? Hill had 2 targets. Smith had 2 targets. Smythe had 2 targets. What are you supposed to do? Smith had 3. Sorry. What are you supposed to do with that?
Dude, most of the time, I feel like you and I are very, very good about parsing roles, picking players that are either undervalued, something like this. I don't even know where to begin. Usually you can figure out sort of like a coach's potential game plan, why they might want to use a guy. I don't notice any rhyme or reason, pattern, nothing to this tight end usage. I legitimately think they're just rotating guys.
Me too. The only argument you can make is like, okay, what's the average depth of target on these guys? Like, is there one of these guys that has bigger play ability? I suppose that's like something you could look at. You know, the ADOT for Julian Hill is 11.2, Jonnu 3.9 on the season, Durham Smythe 6. So Julian Hill's had a couple of opportunities downfield. I'm trying here, Matt. There's just not much there. Maybe it's Julian Hill. Maybe I'm selling myself on Julian here. Hill, fuck it. Hey, he's my guy. I mean, how's that? How's that?
Honestly, what you probably should do is just look at ownership and see who's getting the lowest amount and play that guy, because there's like right now, Julian Hill's 1.9%. What is the real difference between Julian Hill and Pharaoh Brown, who's getting 7%?
Nothing.
There's no difference.
Nothing. I actually think I just go down to the bottom with Hill over Jonnu and take the savings. Let's build a lineup before we get out of here. We'll build one, Matt. Whatever the results are, we live with it because we got to go. And you have a call that'll probably be over. But I mean, look, we have almost 900 people with us. Just tell them, hey, we had priorities. Where do you want to start? You want to start Geno or Goff?
I think so we like all these Detroit guys. Do we just do Detroit onslaught and use Goff? Or do we
Sure.
focus on the run game?
No, why don't we try focusing on the run game for this
Okay,
one?
so let's use Geno then.
All right. And you mentioned that D line for Seattle's banged up.
Very.
Give me I'm just throwing JSN in here. I have to at 5,700 or 5,500.
Okay, I'll start out at running back with Gibbs.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Do you want to go Noah Fant here, or do you want a full out punt at tight end?
I'm fine with either.
All right, then I'm gonna go Metcalf. Okay, so I'm gonna go Metcalf, and then this is gonna likely lead to a $2,500 punt at tight end.
I'm fine with that. Let's just throw Wiley in there then.
Okay, fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. Wiley, Hill, Julian Hill, who cares? That gives us 5,600.
That's pretty good.
It's not bad at all. We have Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, Metcalf. I'm gonna try an Amon-Ra fade and see how this works. Go Jameson Williams.
Okay, so we need to fill running back then.
Can we just throw Miami or Tennessee defense in and see what happens? Who do you want?
Are they the cheapest?
No, we could go Lions or Seahawks, but we have like massive stacks there on both sides.
Tennessee then. That makes sense.
All right. So you have 68.50 remaining per player. You're in pretty good shape here. Who do you want? We have one flex. We have the flex and a running back.
I mean, we can play both of our studs. We can play Achane and Montgomery if we want.
Ooh, all right. Let's try it. I assume this is going to be quite chalky, but let's try it.
I don't know. We don't have Amon-Ra.
I know. And we have Gibbs Montgomery.
This is a massive game stack.
30%. We'll take it. On the fly, not bad.
I like this, man.
Yep.
I'm probably going to run a lot of lineups that look like this.
Agreed. I will sit here and use the single lineup sim to keep tweaking this. I'm going to see what it looks like with Fant and then one of those other 5K guys at receiver as well. Either way, awesome tool. It gives us instant feedback simmed against the field, and I'll keep building here. This is going to put me in the right spot for tonight. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski, me at Lafayette_D. As always, appreciate you guys hanging out. And we'll see you back here tonight. Are you with me tonight, live before lock?
Yes, sir. As long as my internet stays up.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.